Parashat Va-Y'Hi, 2nd January 2026. Theme: Unwavering alliance manifests in genuine benevolence. Hesed be. Parashat Va-Y'Hi or Vayechi represents the 12th weekly Torah portion within the annual Jewish cycle of Torah readings. Vayechi, which translates to Erev, constitutes the final portion of the book of Genesis. The narrative commences as Jacob prepares for his demise, compiling his son Joseph to pledge that he will inter in the Cave of Machpelah. Jacob bestowed blessings upon Joseph's two sons, as well as his own 12 sons before succumbing to death. Subsequently, Jacob's sons lay him to rest. The portion concludes with the passing of Joseph. The parasha begins with Jacob's request not to be buried in Egypt. He is driven by fear that all his divine inspiration will be buried with him in that country forever. Egypt is a land dominated by the cult of the dead, where people are more interested in the past than in the future. The time yet to come is something that they are afraid of. It is seen as a place of anxiety, fear, and danger, but Jacob does not belong there. He is part of promise and is totally devoted to the future. Thanks to the promise he had been given, he is bound to another land which not merely a different location, but also has a totally different outlook. It is God who is the author of his family history, and so the future is something which he is looking forward to seeing. Undoubtedly, he experiences human anxiety that the wit is that the family's future will be buried as well. Yet faith in the promise exceeds all human fears. We can also see in Halakha El-Maseh, chapter 50 to 26, that Joseph died in accordance with Proverbs chapter 10 verse 7. We say of an individual, we remember with love and respect. May his or her memory be a blessing. Sikrono or Sikrona Levraka. The passage from the 1st King chapter 2 verse 1 to 12 stands as the powerful testament to King David's enduring wisdom as an imparted crucial advice to his son Solomon. In his final moments, David confidently urges Solomon to embrace strength, govern judiciously, and remain steadfast in following God's commandments, ensuring both the prosperity and longevity of their dynasty. He addresses how Solomon should manage long-standing adversaries such as Joab and Shimei, equipping him with the insight needed for effective leadership. David's imperative, "Be strong and like a man," serves as an inspiring rallying cry, emphasizing that true strength comes from moral courage and spiritual reliance, rather than mere physical might. He highlights the critical importance of adhering to God's law, including the teaching of the Torah, with the assurance that such commitment will undoubtedly lead to success in all endeavors, by reminding Solomon of the divine promise that fidelity to God's law guarantees a lasting lineage of Israel's throne. David instills confidence in his son's future. Moreover, David's directive to exercise wisdom and mastering justice, particularly with Joab and Shimei, positions Solomon to take control and assert his authority. Effectively, the narrative culminates with David's death and burial in Jerusalem, marking the end of his impressive 40-year reign and the beginning of Solomon's own leadership journey. This passage represents a resolute passing of the torch, a father's firm guidance urging his son to lead with integrity, insight, and unwavering justice. It serves as a powerful reminder of the values necessary for impactful leadership, the strength found in moral conviction, and the profound legacy that shaped future generations. The relationship between Parasha and Vayechi And his Haftarah provides a profound conclusion with patriarchs Jacob, Israel, and David imparting final blessing and guidance to their descendants before the departure. This passage highlights the importance and faithfulness to God's covenant, the transmission of spiritual legacy, and the need for continuity across generations. They remind us that divine promises hinge on our obedience to the Torah, essential for future success and leadership in Israel. In this parasha, we witness a vivid portrayal of the human experience while the divine presence subtly unfolds. Both narratives feature dying patriarchs, delivering vital advice Jacob to Joseph and his son and David to Solomon. As we immerse ourselves in this text, we recognize the struggle posed by a lack of communication within the family, with members so often relying on messengers and unaware of each other's lives. Yet, Book of Genesis reveals Jacob's prophetic blessings for his 12 sons' tribes and his inner wisdom buried in the Promised Land, underscoring the significance of spiritual legacy. In parallel, First Kings illustrates David's call to Solomon to embrace God's ways, uphold his laws, and govern with righteousness. The bonds within his family appear fragile and disconnected, each individual enriched in their own world. It is Jacob's illness and imminent death that ultimately drew them back together. Though we may worry that the human experience might overshadow the divine, both narratives affirm God's unwavering faithfulness to his covenant promises regarding land and kinship and highlight the necessity for the next generation to uphold spiritual foundation to ensure this promise endure. The thematic parallel between these texts serve as inspiring liturgical and thematic connection. In the first King chapter 2 verse 1 to 12, the designated Haftarah of Vayechi emphasizes the theme of leadership and obedience. Jacob's story lays the groundwork for the tribes of Israel, while David's guidance to Solomon sets an uplifting tone for the united monarchy. Both narratives emphasize the vital truth that God's blessing depend on our commitment to His Torah. As we engage with the parasha, we are confronted with the deeply human elements of this unfolding drama, and it naturally raises a troubling question that many of us might share. What will happen to God's promise? Jacob is gravely ill and nearing death, and shortly after Joseph passed away as well. In this moment of despair, and seems that none of the brothers can carry forward God's promise, living in Egypt, a land that feels like a grave, they face the threat of losing of all hope for their family's aspiration. It's understandable to question trust in God's promise when it feels so heavily tested. Our faith can indeed be challenged, but perhaps these trials are opportunities to strengthen our resolve and help us reach beyond the immediate horizon. In many ways, the book of Genesis serves as foundation for the tribes and their future. Meanwhile, First King offers a glimpse into the emergence of the future kingdom under David, highlighting his guidance for Solomon. This connection illustrates how God's promise is intertwined with the actions required to nurture and sustain, reminding us that we are not alone in our struggles. For reflection discussion, how do I experience the influence of God's promise in my life? Do I experience anxiety when thinking about the future? How will leaders pass on their legacy and God's covenant?